Hi, I'm Aaron Parker and welcome to episode 3 of the Conscious Cast from the Conscious Self. So today we're going to be talking about the philosophy behind the Conscious Self. And as promised, we're going to talk about nature and our place in it and why nature is so important to the Conscious Self. Why is it so integral to what we do? Okay, but before we begin, we breathe ourselves into the right place to take on the information and to pass the information on. So what I'd like you to do is close your eyes. And we're just going to take some slow, steady inhales in and out the nose. And we're going to make each breath really quiet and still. Very easy, this one. Very simple, but very effective. So, if you're seated or if you're standing, no problem. All we're going to do is take some slow, deep, quiet and still inhales in and out the nose into the belly. And when you reach the top, we're going to exhale, and the last thing to come in is the belly. Really quiet. Inhale nice and strong, really quiet. Now exhale really slow, really quiet. Two more just like that. Inhale, nice and quiet. Exhale. Last one. Inhale, nice and quiet. Exhale really slow, nice and quiet. Pause at the bottom. Big deep inhale. Pause at the top. Audible sigh. Beautiful. Okay, let's begin our discussion. So why am I talking about nature today? Why am I talking about it being a philosophical aspect of the conscious self? So you could say, we know nature is good for your health. We know nature, is an ally in our wellness. But really, I want to talk about the deeper principles of what nature is really to us. We are nature, essentially. We are nature's consciousness manifest, or at least that's what I believe, and that's what we believe at the conscious self. And when we connect to nature, when we truly connect to nature, when we really find presence and stillness in nature, we find peace too. Because nature is ever present. And that's our true nature at core, is to be present, is to be where our feet are. Now, modern society, contemporary society, is always casting ourselves in the future, always casting ourselves into what we must do next and where we're heading. And yes, I agree, it's good to know which port you're sailing towards, because without that, no wind is favourable. However, you have to be present in what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're chopping wood and carrying water, chop wood and carry water. Do what you're doing at that time, be present. When we're looking into the future, it becomes anxious. Anxieties are cast into the future. And when we look at the past and we analyse it, it can lead to depression and lead to being self-critical of things we've done in the past. So, you can only really be in one place. You can only really be where your feet are. So it stands to reason that we be where we are. And how does that relate to nature? Think about when you go to the forest and think about everything else that's living, working, and acting out their day-to-day in nature. The birds, the bees, the grass, the trees, whatever it may be, it's present. It's doing what it's meant to be doing. Now, we are gifted with reason. We are gifted with thoughts, with speech, with an introspective eye, but seldom do we use that to our advantage. We're often using it to punish ourselves, to take an inward eye in a negative way, and that's not okay. But being present teaches us to be at peace. Presence is peace. So the more we find presence, the more we're in nature, and the more we find peace. Maybe we don't understand the responsibility that we've been given, and that's being the voice for nature, being the protector of nature. But I'm hoping, and I really do feel like there's a resurgence of this, of people connecting to nature and understanding their place in it, but I'm hoping that with the philosophy of the conscious self and with these conversations that we can reignite that connection to nature that we all have, this real deep, profound connection that we all have. So words can't really express that connection. I'm going to do my best today to express that connection, but words can't really express that. It's something that has to be felt, something that can't be quantified. You can, I suppose, in our contemporary society, we often quantify nature and use it as a resource, but really, it's not an environment. It's where we're from. It's what we are at core. We really are connected to this earth, and we're connected to the seasons. We're connected to the moon, the stars, the sun. And if you want to talk about quantification, you can speak about the science which backs this up. Why nature's so good for our mental health. Why nature's so good for anxiety, depression, and also for our immune system. And why we find all our so much healing in nature when we come together in nature. But why things like being in the forest together in community are so integral to our social and our needs as a human, to be part of that world. And it's it's undeniable. The statistics and the data shows this, proves this. And yes, but that being said, it's something that must be sensed. The connection to nature is something that must be felt. It's something that must be experienced. You have to be with nature. You have to sit in nature. You have to take it all in and really be with it. And that's that being present with it. So what I do as a facilitator for my events and retreats is help people connect to nature through the senses, firstly, because I think that's the best port of call to really get someone to connect to nature. And in particular, breath. You notice that we do a breath every time we begin this podcast. And what is nature's greatest gift but the breath? To really take a breath, to be still. The breath is the best way to connect to our nervous system, to relax into the parasympathetic and really find that peace and calm. But if you think about it, the breath is cyclical. It's connected to every single thing, or almost every single living thing on the planet. The trees share a cyclical relationship with the breath with us. And even their spread, their canopy, looks like lungs. Looks like the inside of lungs. You might have seen that photo, which shows a side-by-side comparison of the lungs and a tree's spread. And I don't think that's coincidence. I think it's a symbiotic relationship that we have with the world that we live in. And we really, to be at peace with ourselves, have to connect back to it. And for me, an advanced civilization is, we may be advanced in some areas of life, and we might look at our civilization as advanced because I'm talking to you on a camera from wherever you are in the world, from wherever I am in the world, you can see me on the screen, which is fantastic. That's advanced, yes. However, we are using nature like a resource instead of an ally. Our technology should be focused and based around nature's rhythms and cycles. We should be using nature in our technology, so that we don't strip it of all its goodness, so we don't take away from it. We actually give back to it with what we do, with the processes that we have, which help us sustain life on this planet. We look at nature from this vantage point, where we're looking down on it. And every other living thing on the planet as well, we look down on it as if we have some ownership, but really that's ego. Whereas really we want to be living in eco, which is being part of a wider whole of life forms on this planet. Now, we have an advantage. We have the voice. We have this higher thinking that we believe we have, and really I think we're using it to a disadvantage. I think we can do better, to tell the truth. I think we can be more for nature. I think we can do better. I think we could go back on ourselves and have a look at old religion, old beliefs, and where they used to have a pantheon of gods and goddesses that were connected to nature, that we kind of understood our cycles better from that mysticism point of view, we would be more connected to the land, if there was a bit more mysticism. See, that's the thing with this modern technology, is the information is right at your fingertips all the time. Never have you been able to connect to information so quickly, but that doesn't mean we're cleverer. That doesn't mean we're smarter. It doesn't mean that we use it to our advantage. It means we're overwhelmed by it. So, and there used to be a little bit more magic in the world because of that, because you didn't have it at your fingertips, because you used to have to find it, you used to have to research, or even the mysticism in nature and its gods and the way it used to play out and stuff, and some people might call that, idiotic thinking, as if we were ignorant to the world, but maybe they had a different connection. Maybe the connection was more integral. Maybe the connection was more instinctive. And you look at animals and how they behave in nature, and they just know the cycles, They just know the cycles. And we've lost that. We've really lost that. I think about people in the city who are bombarded by LED light and living 24-hour lives, and things are haywire, how much stress that must have on the human psyche and the human soul. And really, I truly believe that we crave deep down to be back in nature, to be back with nature. Now, I'm not saying we go live in a cave and we go live in shacks in the woods, somewhere that might be appealing to some of you, and probably a few of you will be like, why not? But what I am saying is there's a better way to harmonise with nature, and we need to be out in nature more. Hence what I do, and that's getting people in there just to connect to the breath, connect to stillness, connect to the seasons. We do it all year round, and just be part of it, so that you can be part of what you came to be part of. You came to be a part of this planet. You came to be a part of this world, a part of nature, part of Mother Gaia. And it's your birthright to be with the streams, to be with the forest, and to experience it in its vastness, its fullness. And I don't just mean to see it with these eyes, I mean to experience it in your heart, and I mean to feel it in the fibre of your being. So nature isn't a hobby, it's not a pastime. It's something spiritual, it's something that we are at core, and it's and I don't just mean that you need it to make sure your well-being's all right, go for a walk every now and again. It's something that, like, when you connect to it and you feel that real presence and you feel that spiritual connection, that it really changes your outlook on life and your place in it. And you begin to understand your place in the world. There'll be lots of people watching this now who already understand this, but for the people that are living life day to day, and let's say, especially in the winter in the UK, you're going to work in the dark, you're spending all day underneath LED lights and eating artificial food, whatever, just processed crap. And then you're going back from work in the dark, you haven't seen daylight all day. I really wonder what that's doing to the soul. And as a society, I believe that's why we're sick. There's loads of other factors, loads of other variables, but I really think that's why we're sick as a society, because we've forgotten our place. And we need a resurgence, a remembrance, to really connect back to what we truly are. And by doing so, it brings about authenticity. Because if you can't connect to what you truly are at core, how can you be authentic? How can you be the person you're meant to be if you are starving something so integral to what you are? Authenticity is key, right? To live the life on your terms, live a life on your terms, you have to be authentic. And that's what the conscious self is about. That's the whole point, That was why we called it the conscious self. That's why I called it the conscious self. Because I want you to be the most conscious version of yourself, the most authentic version of yourself. And when you're conscious of your goods, your bads, of everything going on in your life, you can be accountable. And when you're accountable of everything that's going on, it leads to authenticity. And authenticity is your highest vibration. You are your best self when you're authentic. When you can stand in a room and be truly yourself, and even if it annoys or upsets people, so be it. You're being authentic. And that is what you are at core. So this is why nature is so important to the conscious self. And my mission, my goal, my job is to get people back out into nature, to have the remembrance, to really connect to something that's ancient, timeless, not bound by time, not finite, it's infinite. You are part of the cosmos. You are the stars, you are the moon, you are the rivers, you are the trees, you are everything. You are everything that's ever came before you. Every breath that you take is a breath that an ancestor took. We are part of this world. You are interwoven, interconnected into this place, in this universe, into the trees, the stars, everything. You are here now to be part of this. What a time to be alive, to re-find your place in nature. That's my mission. And hopefully, after hearing this, it's your mission too. Now, I want to end on a John Muir quote, because he was a great inspiration for me as I was going through my awakening, as I started to connect back to what I was. So it goes like this. Everybody needs beauty as well as bread, places to play in and pray in, where nature may heal and cheer and give strength to the body and soul alike. And I just thought that was beautiful. So, I've been Aaron Parker from The Conscious Self. This is episode 3 of The Conscious Cast. And next episode we're going to be talking about breathwork, about why the breath is such an important tool and why it's nature's greatest gift, as I mentioned before. and why it can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves and really take us to a place of stillness, peace, and calm, which affects not only yourself in the moment when you are doing the breath or the breath work, but in everyday life, and you get to take that beautiful stillness with you. So join me next time for our breathwork episode, on episode 4. I've been Aaron Parker from The Conscious Self. Big love.